All right, so today we're going deep on something that's pretty crucial. I mean, we all take medicine at some point, right? But have you ever thought about what it takes to make sure those pills and injections are actually safe and
Yeah.
do what they're supposed to?
Yeah, it's something most people probably don't think about too much, but it's a huge system. It's all about regulatory inspections and audits in the pharmaceutical industry.
Exactly. It's like a whole world behind the scenes, making sure the medicines we rely on are actually effective and won't cause more harm than good.
Right, and we're going to explore that world today.
We're going to dive deep into how organizations like the FDA here in the U.S. keep a close eye on everything, from how drugs are made to the clinical trials that prove they actually work.
Fascinating stuff, really.
It is, and to get a real grasp on it, we've dug into some pretty interesting sources. We've got the actual regulations themselves, those dense legal documents like Title 21 of the Code of Federal Regulations.
Oh, yeah, those.
But we're also looking at industry best practices and guidelines. And we've even got some real-world examples from scientific publications like Organic Process Research and Development.
Kind of gives you a glimpse into the real challenges and how companies actually deal with them.
Exactly. So our mission today is to break it all down. What exactly happens during these inspections and audits? Why are they so important?
And what happens if a company doesn't meet the mark? What are the consequences? We want to give you a clear picture of how this whole system works.
All right, so let's imagine a company's got this new drug they want to get out there, or even just keep making the ones they already have. Where does the FDA and all that regulatory stuff actually come into play?
Well, before an inspector even steps foot in a facility, there's a ton of preparation on the company's side.
Oh, yeah, I bet. So much paperwork, right? Or is it all digital these days?
It's a lot of both, actually, but the foundation of it all is something called Good Manufacturing Practices, GMP for short.
GMP, okay. What's that all about?
GMPs are essentially the rules of the road for how medicines should be made. Everything from the cleanliness of the facilities to, making sure the people working there are qualified. And you can find these outlined in, those regulations we mentioned, like 21 CFR parts 210 and 211.
So it's not enough to just have the right formula for the drug. You need a whole system in place to make sure everything's done right.
That's it. There are also international guidelines trying to make sure things are consistent worldwide. The ICH, that's the International Council for Harmonization, they work on that.
Makes sense. Global standards for medicine.
Right, and those GMPs are the benchmarks for inspections. It's what inspectors are checking against.
So kind of like having a Michelin star recipe, but you also need a spotless kitchen and highly trained chefs.
Perfect analogy. And that's where quality systems and controls come in. Companies need detailed procedures for every single step, from when the raw materials come in all the way to when the finished product is shipped out.
Wow, that must be a ton of documentation.
It really is. And it all needs to be actively used and monitored. There's a great book that gets into this, Quality Systems and Controls for Pharmaceuticals.
Sounds like a real page turner.
Well, it's essential reading for anyone in the industry, that's for sure. But you're right about the documentation. It's critical for every single stage, research and development, manufacturing, clinical trials, you name it.
I can only imagine. So what's the FDA's role in all of this paperwork?
Well, there's a whole regulation dedicated to electronic records and signatures. That's 21 CFR Part 11. The idea is to have a complete and secure trail of everything that happens. It can be audited easily if needed.
Like a digital paper trail, huh?
Exactly. And it prevents things like data manipulation. You need to be able to trust the data, right?
Absolutely. So if something does go wrong, you can trace back exactly what happened.
Precisely. When it comes to things like repackaging or relabeling dietary supplements, there are specific GMP requirements too. Part 111 of Title 21 covers that.
Dietary supplements, huh? So even if it's not a prescription medication, there's still oversight.
Right. They need to examine samples from each batch after they've been repackaged or relabeled just to make sure everything still meets the standards.
Good to know. So the company's done all their homework, got their systems in place, all the documentation. What happens when the FDA inspectors actually show up? Is it like, surprise, we're here?
Well, they usually schedule the inspections, but the main goal is to assess whether the company is following all the regulations. Are those systems and controls we talked about actually working the way they should?
So they're not necessarily trying to catch someone doing something wrong, but more like making sure everything's up to snuff.
Yeah, the focus is on verifying that the company can consistently produce drugs that are safe, pure, and effective.
And these inspections, are they just at the manufacturing sites, or do they look at other places too?
Oh, they can cover a whole range of sites. Manufacturing facilities, of course, but also the labs where Quality control testing happens, even the clinical trial sites.
Really? So they're making sure the data from those trials is accurate too.
Absolutely. And that the participants in the trials are being treated ethically and safely.
So what exactly do the inspectors do when they're on site? Just kind of wander around and observe?
Oh, it's much more than that. They do a very thorough review of all the documentation, batch records, test results, standard operating procedures, clinical trial data. I mean, it's a lot.
That digital paper trail we talked about.
Exactly. And they'll also actually observe processes in action, walk through the manufacturing areas, watch how equipment is operated and cleaned, even interview staff to understand their training and roles.
So it's not just about what's written down. It's about seeing if they're actually doing what they say they're doing.
That's it. They're comparing the documentation to reality. And, if those records are incomplete or hard to access, that raises red flags immediately.
It's got to be organized and easy to understand.
Exactly. Being able to provide that information quickly and thoroughly, that's a good sign. Shows that the company has a handle on things.
Now, our sources mentioned something interesting about nasal and inhalation drugs. Like, those inspections might have a specific focus.
Yeah, for those types of drugs, the delivery system itself is super important. The inhaler or the nasal spray. If that doesn't work properly, the drug won't be effective.
Makes sense.
So inspections might really focus on that delivery system, how it's designed, manufactured, and tested, making sure the dose is consistent, the particle size is right, all those details.
So it's not just about the drug itself, but how it actually gets into your system.
Exactly. There's a book, New Drug Development Regulatory Paradigms for Clinical Pharmacology and Biopharmaceutics. It talks about that in more detail.
Okay, so the inspection's done. Inspectors pack up and head out. What happens next?
Well, best case scenario, the inspection wraps up with no major issues. They find everything in order, companies following the regulations. That's good news for the company.
A passing grade.
But if they do find violations, that's when the FDA issues something called a Form 483.
A Form 483, what's that?
It's a document that lists out all the things they observed that weren't in line with the regulations. Basically, a list of where the company needs to improve.
So, like a report card with some areas marked needs improvement.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And the company has to respond to that Form 483 pretty quickly, usually within 15 business days.
And what do they have to do in their response?
They need to come up with a detailed plan to correct those issues. What are they going to do to fix it? What was the root cause of the problem? And how are they going to prevent it from happening again?
So it's not enough to just say, oops, we'll do better. They need to have a real plan.
Exactly. And the FDA reviews that plan to see if it's good enough, if they think the company can actually get back into compliance.
Okay, but what if the FDA isn't happy with that plan? Or what if the violations they found were really serious to begin with?
Well, in those cases, the FDA can get a bit more, let's say, assertive with their enforcement actions.
Assertive, what does that mean?
Well, they might issue something called a warning letter.
A warning letter? Sounds serious.
It is. It means they found some big violations that either haven't been addressed properly or could put public health at risk. And these letters have some teeth.
Like what kind of teeth?
They can lead to import alerts, meaning the company can't bring their drugs into the U.S. anymore. They can even get injunctions, which are court orders that can stop production altogether until those issues are fixed.
Wow, so it can really shut down a company's whole operation.
And that's not all. Warning letters can also delay the approval of any new drugs the company is developing.
Oh, so it's not just affecting their current products, it's hurting their future too.
That's right. It can have huge financial implications for the company and delay important new medications from reaching patients.
So a warning letter is definitely not something you want to ignore. Are there any other actions the FDA can take that are even more serious?
In some cases, they might pursue legal action through the courts, and this can lead to something called a consent decree.
Consent decree, that sounds intimidating.
It is. It's basically a legally binding agreement between the company and the FDA. The company agrees to specific actions to fix the violations, often with strict deadlines and oversight from the FDA or a third party.
So they're really under the microscope at that point.
Definitely. And if they don't follow through, there can be serious penalties, big fines, even criminal charges in extreme cases.
So the FDA's got some real power to make sure companies are doing things right. Now, what if a drug's already out there on the market, people are taking it, but then it turns out there's a serious safety issue?
Well, the FDA can take action to remove that drug from the market if it's deemed unsafe or ineffective.
Wow, they can actually pull the plug on a drug completely.
They can. There's a regulation that covers this, 21 CFR Part 314. It's all about drug approvals and withdrawals.
So even after a drug is approved, it's not like the FDA just forgets about it.
That's right. They continue to monitor the safety and effectiveness of drugs even after they're being used by patients. This might involve things like phase 4 studies.
Phase 4, those are the ones that happen after a drug's approved.
Right. They gather more information about the drug's long-term safety, how it works in different groups of patients, that sort of thing. And the FDA can also require companies to do post-marketing surveillance.
So they're keeping tabs on the drug, making sure no new safety issues pop up.
Exactly. It's all about protecting the public and making sure the medications people are taking are truly safe and effective.
So to sum it all up, we've seen how companies have to prepare for these inspections, follow those GMPs, have their quality systems in place, and keep everything documented.
And then there's the inspection process itself. The FDA comes in, checks everything out, and then there's the follow-up.
Right. Could be a Form 483, a warning letter, even legal action if things are really bad.
It might seem complicated, but it's all about ensuring the quality, safety, and effectiveness of the medicines we all rely on.
It really makes you appreciate all that goes into making sure the medications we take are safe. It's a whole system working behind the scenes.
A system that's constantly evolving and adapting to new challenges.
And it has to, because people's health and well-being are at stake.
Absolutely. It's
Yeah.
something to think about the next time you pick up a prescription.
It really is. And it shows how important it is for companies to be on top of things. Following the rules isn't just about checking boxes. It's about people's lives.
It is. It's about trust. Trust in the medications we take, trust in the system that regulates them, and trust in the companies that manufacture them.
Well said.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us today. This was a fascinating deep dive.
It was my pleasure.
And for our listeners, remember to stay informed, stay curious, and always keep asking questions. Until next time.
Exactly. Until next time.